Well, good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to the very last hour of Inclusive Design 24. And for this hour, we have Jon Metz, who will be talking about making sure your PDFUA PDF is actually PDFUA. So Jon is an information architect at the Paciello Group. Jon is also an expert in PDF accessibility, and he participates in PDF standards with the International Standards Organization and Association for Information and Image Management's North American Committee for PDFUA. I wish I had taken a bigger breath before I read that sentence. Jon specializes in helping organizations integrate accessibility into their processes. And previously, he was an invited expert on the W3C's Education and Outreach Working Group. And I'll let Jon introduce himself more.
Thank you. Yeah, so hi there. My name is Jon Metz, and as was said, I'm an information architect at the Paciello Group. But in case you've never heard of me, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. But I think I'm just going to start the presentation now, if that's all right with you. Let me just get on in here. Can you verify that you can see my screen?
Yep, you're good to go, Jon. And just one quick shout out, if you have any questions, please go through Twitter and hashtag ID24, and we'll make sure we get those to Jon at the end of the session.
All right, cool. So I've been working in some capacity in the field of accessibility since 2007. After graduating art school, I started in graphic design when companies were still trying to figure out what the correct name of my field was. While the web was growing at an incredible rate, I decided to focus on print graphic design instead, probably due to the fact that I was used to being unpopular in high school. For a couple of years, I worked in newspaper design before moving on to making more heavily designed documents for marketing, excuse me, and ultimately landed a position with a federal contractor making PDFs that rarely saw print. Their federal client loved the designs, and I was able to see many of my publications of really boring subject matter go through clearance really quickly. Unfortunately, after designing a bunch of these documents, the federal agency came back and told us, these are great and all, but they need to be made something called Section 508. When I asked for further information about this, the agency was hesitant to provide any guidance because they didn't want to be telling us what to do. When I researched this law, it seemed heavily focused on websites with very little indication of how to apply that to PDFs. Thus began my long, often thankless journey into document accessibility. At the beginning of my research, when I asked about how Word excuse me, and PowerPoints and PDFs were supposed to be made accessible, I noticed that many accessibility experts shunned the idea that documents should ever be used in the first place. However, more and more of these documents continue to be uploaded to the web, regardless of the fact that everyone claimed that print would die and these things would eventually become obsolete. Because of this, we've got a situation where there's some amazing advanced technology on the web that can be made totally accessible, but we have these older file formats that are in the wild that seem to have extremely limited accessibility. After ISO 14289, the specification for PDFUA, came out, I was struck by how most of the rules in the document were directed at programmers. I didn't have a problem reading this stuff because I'm weird and I enjoy reading stuff like this, but I knew that most designers would have a difficult time figuring out how to use this thing because it relies on using another really long and complicated file format specification called ISO 32000, which is the technical specification for PDF. I remembered the movie Finding Forrester when Anna Paquin's character tells Rob Brown that in order to change the rules of allowing girls at an all-boys school, her father did what any respectable donor would do, get on the board and change the rules. So that's what I did. I joined the U.S. Committee for PDFUA at the ISO, and I've been working on speaking up for people stuck remediating PDFs with very little guidance ever since. A lot of information out there for PDF accessibility is focused on how to set up a file to make it accessible. This includes tagging it in the tags panel, making sure your content follows a decent structure, and that you follow best practices to get stuff done correctly. I'm not going to talk about any of that. If you're interested in learning how to make a PDF as accessible as possible without going all out making a PDFUA, you can watch the first 3 videos of my YouTube series. In those videos, I show you how to create a tag PDF starting from Microsoft Word according to the specification for ISO 32000. If you're really adventurous, you can watch the 4th video on how to take the tag PDF and make it PDFUA. I'll tweet that out later. In this session, I'm going to talk about how to take your PDFUA document and make sure that you've actually done everything you need to do in order to make a PDFUA. PDF is not like HTML, where the content on the page excuse me, where the content on the page is a reflection of the underlying code that can be relatively easily modified and made accessible. All the visual content in a PDF is essentially organized bits of complex data that mean different things depending on how it's organized. Determining what's important to present to other users means translating the relevant stuff in a PDF that are required to understand this organization of data. This is accomplished through a process known as tagging. The tags in a PDF directly correspond to the relevant visual information in the PDF. It's important to note that a tagged PDF is not necessarily accessible. When we tag a PDF, we're basically making a way for the PDF to become something else. There are far more purposes to tag PDF than just accessibility. The rules to make a tagged PDF are based on the idea that you would only use the tags that are needed based on what exactly you want end users to be able to do with your PDF. It makes sense that the tagged PDF would only be accessible if there were tags, because we are interpreting the relevant information in the PDF that should be exposed to assistive technology. However, it's usually necessary to modify the organization of the tags so we can give more meaning to the document. When Word or InDesign spits out a tagged PDF, it usually is only following the technical specifications for which tags you use. The order it chooses is usually based on which content you authored first. That's not always how we want to present information to end users, though. When we modify and move the tags, we're also able to provide more or less information to the underlying data to make the PDF more meaningful to users with assistive technology. Therefore, the process of tagging can easily change the actual data it represents. When this happens, we run into a possibility of causing problems in the underlying code in the PDF that we might not realize or even understand is happening without testing for it. PDFUA is designed to translate the important aspects of which tags to use, how to change them, and how to make the use of the most relevant information in the tags so users with assistive technology are getting the most bang for their buck. Before the ISO published the PDFUA standard, a common approach to trying to make PDFs accessible included using checklists, relying on third-party best practice guides, and using the built-in testing tools in the software that made the PDF. Some people even went so far as to test them using a screen reader. Checklists generally have mixed results in terms of how accurately they address accessibility concerns, because many of them include questionable requirements, such as the choice of which font to use. Using the built-in testing tools included with PDF authoring software typically meant PDF creators had been relying on what companies decided was important for accessibility. And testing with a screen reader was difficult to get it to read correctly because the rules that everybody was using was all rather arbitrary. Fortunately, PDFUA uses standards in order to make sure PDFs are accessible. What this means is that there is an international consensus of what it takes to make a PDF accessible by adhering to a specification. Aside from the obvious benefits of making your PDF work for people with disabilities, there are other significant benefits to testing for compliance. Many government agencies require contractors to provide proof that they are meeting specific metrics and measurements requirements. PDF accessibility workflows that employ proper reporting methods are able to use the results from testing to meet those requirements. Further, reporting methods can also help to provide insight into risk management and maintaining consistency of the PDF's workflow's performance requirements. ISO 14289, the standard for PDFUA, is considered a companion standard. This means it's used along with other relevant standards requirements. ISO 14289 is an interpretation of the relevant accessibility requirements in ISO 32000, which is the technical specification for PDFs. This means if your PDF is required to conform to WCAG or Section 508 or some other random policy, there may be additional requirements beyond the PDFUA specification, particularly if you are using features in your PDF that are outside the scope of the spec. When we test for PDFUA, we're primarily interested in the relevant information that's exposable to assistive technology. In order to determine what exactly that entails, it requires PDFs to follow some necessary guidelines that the PDF file format specification dictates we're able to do with the underlying code in the PDF. As I explained, when we tag a document, we're not only providing meaningful context to that code, but we're also able to tweak it and force it to behave differently than it may have been set up to do. Therefore, we want to make sure that we're using structural criteria of ISO 32000 as interpreted by ISO 14289. At its core, PDFUA focuses primarily on providing the most meaningful content, so it focuses mostly on making sure the PDF tags are being used correctly in the first place. In addition to using tags appropriately, many tags require that you incorporate a relationship between the elements to provide better context for what's there. For example, if you make a table in a PDF, you'd need to provide a meaningful relationship between the headers and the data cells via the scope, as well as include a meaningful relationship to the rest of the document using a summary. Similarly, using lists require they're marked up using the proper list structure, and the individual list components relate to each other by explaining the type of list it is. Non-text elements like formulas for math and images would need to have alternate text. The PDF document itself must also have relevant information that directly relates to the content it contains. This is accomplished by giving it a language and making the title, its description, and other metadata exposed to the end user. It's important to understand all parts of an accessible PDFUA PDF relate to each other from the top-level document properties all the way down to the smallest tag, and this is what we need to test for. Since the focus of PDFUA is to ensure the most meaningful information of PDF is exposed to a technology, and this is determined by interpreting the file format specification, PDFUA strives to avoid the content-specific requirements that many other policies and standards focus on, unless there is a programmatic way of modifying the underlying PDF data to expose the information to something else. For example, there is a programmatic way to modify a tag in order to meet WCAG 3.1.3 and 3.1.4. You do this by adding what the PDF specification calls expansion text. In the majority of the PDFs that I create, I add expansion text and acronyms, which is what that criteria is for, because I believe that this provides a much richer experience to the end user. However, there is no requirement in PDFUA that this must be done, because this is a content-related issue. Therefore, issues such as an author's use of font choice, or how difficult the reading level is, or if there's a glossary with pronunciations, are all considered content-related, and are therefore out of the scope when testing for PDFUA. However, if a user's choice to do something can be included in the structure of the PDF, then it falls under the purview of PDFUA. In other words, PDFUA doesn't care about what custom fonts you use, but it will require you to embed the fonts into the PDF in order to conform it to PDFUA. It also won't check for color contrast requirements either, because colored content in a PDF is irrelevant in the context of how the underlying code is created in a PDF. This may surprise and irk a bunch of people, but it's also worth noting that since PDFUA is a companion standard, it's meant to provide the technical implementation for accessibility. Doing this provides a method of worrying about the stuff that matters to get a PDF to work with AT without conflicting with other required standards. In most cases, PDFUA will be required to meet some other standard as well. Its purpose is to show you how to meet those other standards as best as possible by using a technical approach to do so. The document I'll be demonstrating my testing workflow today is a memo from the US federal government. So it would need to follow additional content-related requirements such as color contrast. You might recognize this document from my YouTube videos, if you sat through them, where I showed how to make a Word document PDFUA. I've already gone and verified that the color in this document is good to go, so I don't need a test for that right now. For the sake of brevity, I'm only going to go over the highlights of the tools that I use, rather than bore you with the details of how to use them. Eventually, I'll be adding another video to that PDFUA series on YouTube that is far more involved. It's important to note, before I start any testing workflow, I like to make sure that I've considered all the necessary components that I'll need to test for. In a real-world example, I would need to figure out if there are any other requirements that I need to consider in order to make sure my testing is complete. For example, since this is a memo that would appear on a US federal website, I'd know that I'd need to make sure that it successfully passes Section 508 criteria. However, it might have a far more intensive requirement of following WCAG 2.0, since this memo will be hosted someplace that could be considered an authority on accessibility. In addition to any of those requirements, it also needs to take into consideration who my audience might be. If my audience was someone who may have cognitive impairments or reading disability, I would need to consider whether or not to aim for a higher conformance level. Once any other requirements for the document have been met, I would also need to consider whether this document is capable of conforming to PDFUA. As I mentioned, a tagged PDF is not necessarily accessible because the purpose of tagged PDFs are to be able to convert them to something else. Many other PDF specifications have requirements that may conflict with PDFs, and there are even some kinds of PDFs, like the ones that are created from Adobe Lifecycle, which are considered out of the scope of PDFUA specification. However, I know this is not a dynamic form, and it's not destined for any other specification as far as I know. So I'm fairly confident that the only specification requirements I need to follow are going to be Section 508, WCAG, and PDFUA. But for the purposes of this video, I'll only really be covering the PDFUA testing. The tools I use as part of my testing workflow include the Adobe Acrobat Accessibility Checker, the Acrobat plugin PDFGo HTML from Callus Software, the PDF Accessibility Checker from Access for All, and the Common Look PDF Validator. I'll send out information later about these free tools after my presentation. Since I'm tagging my files in Acrobat, I tend to use the Adobe Acrobat Accessibility Checker to verify that I haven't made any glaring stupid omissions. Nothing says noob like posting a PDF with rookie errors. The only reason why I use this tool is to make sure that I catch any low-hanging fruit before moving on to more robust methods of verifying compliance. The tool isn't very helpful though, since using this tool is not going to be able to verify that my PDF meets most of the criteria for ISO 14289. The checker looks for whether or not the document itself is in relative working order, if the page seems good to go, that my lists are using the right PDF-specific tags, ensures my headings are in order, and whether or not images that have not been marked as an artifact have alternate text. But it will ignore anything it deems as irrelevant in the PDF, which unfortunately is most of the criteria we need to validate PDFUA. We don't have any tables in our document, so it skips over those requirements. Any issues it finds that could possibly be wrong will cause the labels that cover these areas to become bold and provide a helpful explanation of how many issues you have in the document. So yeah, 2 issues here, 1 issue here. The check mark next to the items in the checker pane verifies that Acrobat doesn't see anything wrong with these issues. However, whenever you run this with the default options checked for the accessibility checker, you will always receive 2 issues in the document section. These issues are the logical reading order and the color contrast, because they require you to use some other tools aside from Acrobat to make sure you're okay. Another error under the page content is showing me that I have an error of navigation links, because it too requires a manual check. The purpose of this error is to verify that you don't have a menu of links on the page that are sending people all over the place, and that there's a way to get around having to deal with that. If you're wondering why I'm getting this error, since I don't have navigation on my page, it's most likely happening because I have a list of links at the bottom in a list. If you have links that go to the same location, this may also cause an error. However, since I'm sure I've provided as much meaningful context as I could by correctly tagging the document according to the ISO 32000 specification, I believe I've successfully covered any low-hanging fruit that may be showing an error. So I think this is all good to go. When we used the Adobe Accessibility Checker, it gave us a warning that we need to verify the logical reading order. You can think of the logical reading order as a way to interpret the most relevant information in the document in the order it should be perceived by someone who's taking a gander at your PDF. This differs from the content reading order, which is the explicit layout of how the content physically appears in the document. I can verify that the way I set up my tags represents how I want the information to be perceived programmatically by simply arrowing down on the tags, which I don't have. Here we go. However, this can be really tedious with longer documents, but I want to get a better idea of what's being translated to my readers who may be using different kinds of assistive technology that I might not have available. After I install PDFUA HTML on my Mac, I can see that there's a new menu file called Plugins, and when I open that, I can open up PDFUA HTML. Let's say continue. Go. The content is displayed logically in the order that I tag my PDF. Further, the accessibility information of my images are exposed, and I get a visual taste of what a screen reader would encounter when it's reading my document. Let's see how this is being affected by the tags that I'm using. At the top of the page, there's a menu bar with a selection of links. I'll choose structure tags. Now my page is organized via the content, but it also includes labels for each of my content. Using this option lets me verify that not only is my logical reading order good, but that I'm using the correct tags as well. PDFUA, PDFGO HTML also has some other useful features. Using this plugin provides a number of resources for both low vision and users with reading disabilities who may have difficulty accessing PDFs. The Easy Reader option places all the text in a really neatly composed article. Inverted makes all the text white on black. Low vision blows the text way up to fill the entire screen without having to actually zoom in. And there's even a low vision inverted as well, which is pretty nice. Finally, the dyslexia option changes the font entirely by using a special font designed specifically for people with reading disabilities. I'll need to move over to Parallels because the next two tools are only available on Windows. The PDF Accessibility Checker, or PAC 2.0 from Access for All, is a great tool to identify any immediate defects in your PDF. You can think of this as the Acrobat checker on steroids. Let's open our PDF document and take a gander at what it tells us about our PDF. I'll just hit Start. Inside the results list, there's a bunch of check marks noting that there are no errors. At the bottom of the results list, we're presented with a big green check mark icon with an alert stating, this PDF is technically accessible. That's great and all, but let's run PAC with a PDF that does have some errors in it so we can take a quick tour of the relevant interface options to see what this tool offers us. There we go. If we click on the report, so since there are errors in this PDF file, we're getting a bunch of X icons in the list along with an alert telling us this PDF contains errors, only partially accessible. If we click on the report button in the results group, we can find a detailed explanation of each issue in the PDF. From here, we can navigate to our errors, and it shows us exactly where on the page errors are found. Here, it's finding some problems here. From here, we can navigate to our errors, and it shows us. This can be very helpful to pinpoint where to find the errors in order to remediate the PDF back in Acrobat. The three buttons after the results list provide us with a similar way to how PDFUA HTML works, so I'm not really going to go into these very much. Using PAC can be really helpful to find the more elusive errors that the Acrobat Accessibility Checker overlooks. PAC checks your PDF using the PDFUA specification as a litmus test. I prefer to use this tool as a means to weed out the less obvious errors quickly, but for a more robust validation and reporting tool, I'll use the Common Look PDF Validator instead. PDFUA has a number of conformance criteria that must be met. Some of them are able to be verified through automation, but others require you to manually verify them. I prefer to use the Common Look PDF Validator for the final part of my workflow because I like the UI a bit better, and it has some really nice reporting features that I tend to use for configuration management. I don't like to rely on it for the entire evaluation because in addition to any errors, it also gives you warnings for stuff without clearly explaining why it might be good to address those warnings. I like to clear up as many errors as possible before using this tool so I can make decisions about which warnings to really worry about. You can get to the Common Look PDF Validator in Acrobat through that Plugins menu. What's great about this tool, aside from the fact that it's free, is that it does a really good job of checking to make sure that it meets the requirements for a bunch of different standards. On the Standards window, we can open this up and we can see that there's structural and accessibility. The only standard that's relevant to the structure is ISO 32000 because this is the file format specification for PDF. This specification covers all the rules for acceptable tags we can use in the PDF. It also checks for a wide variety of accessibility standards, including the current Section 508 requirements, WCAG 2.0, PDFUA, and some requirements from HHS that are based on their checklist. For now, I'll just select the PDFUA, and I'll click on Full. And that gives me full results. Let me just expand this a little bit. This lists everything, but we'll need to narrow down the stuff that passes so we can make sure that everything is solid. To do that, I can easily use the Filter By feature by clicking on this and choosing All. And that gets rid of everything for now, but now I can choose Passed and see what has been passed in the document. If I checked on Failed, got rid of Passed, then nothing shows up, because we already verified that our PDF is technically accessible in PAC 2.0. There's also a bunch of stuff that's not applicable that'll show up because the PDF that we're using doesn't actually have anything relevant to check there. On the other hand, it has a whole bunch of user verification things. The parts of PDFUA that require manual checking for the standard are listed in the results pane. From here, I can go through each item in the list and confirm that everything is okay. For example, the first issue is title and viewer preferences. Basically, we'd want to make sure that the title of our document is a human language, not a file name. To verify that it's good, I choose metadata from the top ribbon panel. And then this pops up, and I can see my keywords, a subject, author, title, and making sure that everything is in there. Once that's verified, I can change the status. I click on the status button on the results pane. I can give it a comment. I'll leave my name, my initials, so another member of my team can verify anything. If they have any questions, they can come back to me. And then if I change this to passed, click OK, it'll disappear from the list because it doesn't match my filter. So another nice feature about this, I have a very quick mouse, sorry. A nice feature. While all the tools made sure that I used alt text on images, none of them really verified that my alt text was clear. It's not uncommon to come across alt text in a PDF where it will have some really strange alt text like where it's located on someone's computer. So it helpfully asks me to manually verify that the alternate representation I chose clearly and distinctly explains where the images are. As I click on each issue for the graphics, I can ensure that my alt text is relevant based on the Properties panel. Once I know they're good, I'll simply hold Shift and select all 3 checkpoints and mark them all as passed using Status. And then I can go through the rest of this document and make sure that everything is all set. When I'm finished validating for PDFUA, I could go back and check any other standards for my PDF that I need to validate for. But if I choose them now, they'll overwrite anything that I've done before and clear the results. So it's best to use all of the ones that you need to know beforehand, and that's why I like to have all my requirements up front. Once that's all set, I can then go ahead and generate a report. And Common Look Validator provides us with a really nice detailed report in HTML. From here, we can take the report that's included and customize it for our very own project management styles. One second. So, how do I? There we are. Making sure your PDFs are actually PDFUA can be less painful if you follow a good workflow and use tools that are specifically intended to validate against the PDFUA specification. Doing this will help to manage and determine areas where you need to improve upon. This is especially helpful when your workflow includes more than just one person, but it will also help to make better quality PDFs that are as accessible as possible. Thanks for taking the time to watch my presentation.
Thanks, John. Great job. Really appreciate it. Just clicking through Twitter, looks like we have one question from Ashley. Let's pull that up here. She says, John, what's the price range for these tools, and are they all for Windows, or do some also work on Macs?
They're all extremely expensive. They're all free, with the exception of Acrobat. You have to pay for that. So the Pack 2.0 and Common Look Validator are free from very cool companies, and but they only work on Windows. The Callus PDF Go HTML will work on a Mac or a PC. So that's a really nice one to use.
Great.
Yeah, these are some great tools.
Yeah, so that's all the questions I see. So unless, Gene, you had anything you'd like to add, I'll kind of switch here.
No,
to all of us here.
Oh, good. No, I was really interested in the tools and in your workflow, and I really appreciated the detail of that. It was really good. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. That's fantastic.
I think this wraps up another year of just really amazing Inclusive Design 24 from the Costello Group.
I'm jumping in. Ashley, I have a follow-up question.
Oh, okay, good.
She says, John, do you have a favorite item from In-N-Out's secret menu? I just noticed your shirt.
I told you that. It wouldn't be secret.
Oh, that's Ashley checking for the details right there. Yeah, it's been great. I can't believe 24 hours of talks already done. Great way to celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I'm curious to know if anyone out there actually watched all 24 talks live. If you did, tweet using the hashtag ID24. Maybe I can get you a signed picture from the Viking and Lumberjack.
Hey,
sent to your house or something like that. Definitely would like to thank everyone that had a big piece in this. We know we had a lot of presenters from all around the world who were able to join and give talks. We had all of our moderators that were able to jump in and join. So we really appreciate that. And I'll throw a shout out to Bill Gregory. He put a lot of work and effort into into putting this all together, a lot of behind-the-scenes things. So thank you, Billy, for all of your work in getting this together.
And Patrick,
Gene, you have
for the
any final
website?
say?
Oh, Patrick for the website. Thank
Oh,
you,
Patrick, you're
for the
right. Patrick
website.
put all the effort into it. Yeah,
Yep.
good call. So without further ado, that will end it. That's 24 hours. Well, just shy of it, close enough. We'll round up.
Round up.
We look forward to doing this again next year.
All right, fantastic.
All right,
Bye,
maybe
everyone.
more accessible web next year.
All right.